issues relating to walkability and creating healthy communities. Please welcome Ben.
For the avoidance of doubt, that roundabout's crap. Absolutely. So, and absolutely, if it's going to be there, it should have head crossings on all legs and in design, up with design lines. So clear.
Been saying it for years.
You've got to convince Vic Roads, guys.
That'll be local roads, wouldn't it?
No, that's a Vic Roads.
I haven't got a clicker, so I might have to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of a bit unsure what to cover in this talk, but it's kind of good in one way, following Kyle and having Dwayne after me, because two of the biggest issues I'd cover were the principal pedestrian networks, and Dwayne's doing some of our stuff on seniors and walking and cycling, which is a really big issue. So I'm kind of good I'm in between, but I don't have to do it, so it gives me a little bit of freedom. But I hope I've pitched it in the right way. But one of the things, this first quote I often just like to start with, because it's really just a simple quote, but how important walking is to us as humans. You know, as a kid, it's the first thing you want to do. It's my first memory, even I can still hold on to it now, of trying to get up and walk when I was a kid. And for an older person, it's the last thing you want to give up. Because it's not just about your physical activity, it's your mobility, it's your freedom, your ability to lead your life independently as part of a community and everything. So it's the last thing you want to give up. But it's as if, you know, we do everything we do in between works against that. We really don't value walking. But I guess for us, the key thing is walking. Kids walking to school, seniors walking to shop, walking to work, whatever it is the indicator of a healthy community, one of the best indicators you can possibly have. And you've all recognised we're not doing very well because it's really not valued. And some of this stuff you would know already, but the thing that we design our suburbs without footpaths, or when we do roadworks, we put bloody great signs up that say, don't walk, your walkers, naff off, we don't want to know you, seek an alternate route. That's for cars. What about walkers if you've got a tram, wheelchair, whatever, walking along that road? So we just tell walkers just to bugger off. And we make it scary. We do things like pedestrians, whatever, you come down here and get bumped, that's where you should go. So there's all these little cues we've got right through our urban network. We make it difficult where we have a nice, beautiful path that goes to nowhere. Or our footpaths across the entire network have in poor disrepair. But then when we do things like the wonderful yellow crosswalk, and we don't police them. So we just say, there's a senior there, kid, family, whoever, doesn't matter, and police by and large do not police crossings like that. So we make it extremely difficult, and we create really car-dependent suburbs, as we all know, that it's nowhere to walk to, and if it was, it's probably quite dangerous to walk because we have poor facilities or high speeds and those sort of things, or nice little developments cut off from the rest of the urban area. And for kids particularly, we like to imprison them, behind fences either way, so that's suburbia out in the outer suburbs. And how bad an environment it is where we've got to do that, all this green space here, we've got to still put them in jail or put them in a cage or put them in the back seat of a car. So that's what we're doing with our car-dependent suburbs. And we have poor design for kids. And this one I just want to point out because this is actually a curb extension. Fantastic things, and we believe in them. But often when we design these things, we don't look at what the impact it might have on kids. These two kids, who I don't know, on their bike, looking here, looking down a road on an angle going back that way, they've got signs there, they've got vegetation. Don't cut the vegetation down, but just a bit of pruning. There's cars parked. There's no way those kids can actually see and get a clear vision of cars racing up the 50k street. And we want them to look the other side because cars turning in this way and are supposed to give way to them invariably don't. So we don't design our cities, even once we think we're doing well, really for kids. We design for cars and speed. Every urban neighbourhood where you see it, where even if you're walking across here, forget it's got no pram ramp, forget it's no connection, we've got this bloody big wide road which says to cars, whatever you do, drive as fast as you can around that corner. Even though when they're turning in either way, peds have right of way. So our cues to drivers are completely counter to what the road rules are. And speed is really key. Our speed limits are way behind international standards. They're absolutely appalling in urban areas particularly, and the previous government had their half-assed speed zone guidelines review. It was not a review of speed limits, it's just how the guidelines are implemented. And we know that speed is really critical. Look at the table here. The darker areas where you have lower speed, you'll have much more type of community activity, like people talking, playing, watching the kids, whatever they're doing. The things which make a healthy, sustainable, vibrant community, the type of communities I suspect all of you, and I hope all of you would want to live in. So speed is really critical. But we have things like our school zones, which are an absolute crock, because they're not built about, school zones are not about getting kids walking to school. They're not about the journey to school. They're about the drop-off point and making the drop-off point safer. So the cynic in me says they're about facilitating car travel, because they're not about facilitating kids walk to school. Shopping strips, great to drop them to 40. We're on a hiding to nothing until we start to think about how are we going to get people walking into the shopping strips. So reduce the car, the ability of cars to drive around the shopping strips, slower, better parking trees. But until we're stopping cars driving to the shopping, we're just going to get frustration. So these sort of approaches are really half-baked. I forgot I put this one in here. It's just a little reminder that walking accounts for, which people don't think about, 13% of all trips, not just short trips in Victoria. So just stick it on your back of your mind how fundamental it is to the transport system, despite having a massive decline in walking. So take it, you don't have to read it all, but basically walking's the green, blue's the cars. We've stuffed it up since the Second World War. And that's walking, because of that, things like obesity, inactivity costing nearly $60 billion a year, that 63% adults are overweight or obese, and even more disturbing, 25% of kids are now overweight or obese. When I was a kid, it was probably about 5% or so. But things like congestion, which many of you would have to deal with, road trauma, transport poverty, where 20, 30 years ago we used to talk about housing poverty. But now we have this forced car ownership. I'm lucky enough to live in an inner area where I don't have to. But people have forced car ownership in the outer burhs because we have poor transport choices and bad urban design. So because of that too, we have an absolute social disconnection in a lot of those neighbourhoods because people are not out and about walking. So walking to school, I'm just going to touch on this. We all know walking to school figures have dropped. From 1970 to 94, dropping from 50% down to about 20%. But what's disturbing about this is not just we know it's bad, we don't even collect the data about it anymore. ABS does not do walk-to-school stats. We have no reliable data collection of the number of kids walking to and from school as the indicator of the healthy community. So, and now I want to just jump onto, I'm going to jump around a bit, road fatalities. And over the last 10 years, and there was a report released today, which I think I've only had a quick, not today, I've only seen it today, I think it's released this week. But this is data from the last 10 years to 2002 to 2011, looking at where we've had the gains in road fatalities. And you can see that the dark blue is Victoria, the light's Australia, and the gains have been in vehicle occupants, not in pedestrians. Particularly in Victoria, we're rubbish. So there has been some gains, but not if our focus has been on vehicle or occupants. Bicycles fare worse than pedestrians, if you're wondering. Another one is senior stuff, and we had a bit of media last week about senior road fatalities and road stats, and they're absolutely atrocious and appalling. That we now have that 70% of the population, those over 70 to 10% of the population, for 33% of peg deaths. And, this year alone we've had 19 deaths, 18 deaths. 3 of those have been over 90. And as far as we can tell, at least 2 have been no fault of their own. 6 have been over 80. And the majority not their fault. And we know from TAC research looking at those injured, in the senior pets injured while walking, that they've been only at fault in 12% of crashes. It wasn't a massive sample, but it's published research at TAC, which is counter to what the general public thinks about pedestrian crashes. They think it's all pedestrian fault. This one's a bit busy, but this is some data we've not yet published, but we will soon. We will release some age-friendly design guidelines, probably not till August now. But just looking at what the causes, and right and left turn manoeuvres are 27% of crashes are right and left turn manoeuvres where they're supposed to give way. Roundabouts, 5% are on roundabouts. And women are overrepresented in roundabout crashes compared to men. But this one, 16% are on footpaths. 16% of senior crashes are on footpaths. Driveways, car paths, coming in and out. These sort of stats, they're absolutely horrifying, where people don't understand the impact that's having on seniors and their ability to get around. So how do we as a community respond? Coppers, red light blitzes. jaywalking. Despite force command knowing that they don't work, because they don't address the issues which cause, in particularly for seniors, the crashes. And the TAC no longer funds them to do it. But they give good media. And we think, oh, you know, they're doing something. But it reaffirms to the general community that it's pedestrians' fault. They're getting hit because they're not obeying red lights. Or we tell pets to take care. We tell seniors to take care, which is rubbish, because we should be creating a road environment that takes care of them. We don't target driver behaviour. And I've had a few chats with Vic Roads over the last 2 weeks of the new Travel Happy, which is about sharing the road responsibly and everyone cooling down a bit, which is a great approach. It's something we need to do. But we're going to open up the pedestrian component. Well, what we're looking for is really driver behaviour to address the causes of the crashes. We get the standard things like the highest profiles about staying visible, watch for turning cars, waving when cars obey the road laws. We have to get beyond this because we have a tendency to victim blame. This is two women, 78 and 84, hit in a car park, slammed against a library wall in Bayside in 2013. One died, the other one hospitalised. I don't know what happened. What does the coppers come out and say in the local paper? Vulnerable road users, including pedestrians, should take extra care on the road. I'm going to rest my case on that one. I want to just jump to like a little example, which is something that I've been watching in my community with some local community action, because it's about we're starting to think about how do we address issues of concern in the local community. And this one is in Northcote. They've got St George's Road there, High Street here, and a little bit here where Westgard Street and Merrick Parade converge. And there's a little spot there. There's also this bit here, which is a pedestrian refuge here. Cars come screaming around here, and the seniors have trouble getting across. And they come up the creek, they have trouble getting across the crossing area there. It's a road that's arterial at 60k, and it goes through a built-up area of single lanes and housing there. And there's been 8 times in the last 5 years that we're aware of where vehicles have left the road and gone over to the shared path, knocked down the sign. This is 8 times in 5 years. Okay? Same spot, 8 times in 5 years. Now, what's the response? How do we deal with this? The Big Roads engineer, and I'm not going to pick on the individual engineer who's here, apologies, because this is something I think is across the network, is what we're trying to get sort of understand what's happening across the network. And when he went out and had a look, he didn't see any vehicles speeding. Of course, bloody not. It's 60k. The issue is not speeding. The issue, the speed is too high. Because if you go up 60, you're probably going to come off the road. And even this truck came round the bend safely, with ease, at a speed I consider to be around 50k an hour. The shared path's here. If you're there with your kids, elderly, whatever, and you're standing and the truck's coming at 50k an hour, and the last minute it turns the corner and goes around, how the hell would you feel? You'd be petrified. I mean, it's really, particularly when you know how frequently cars leave the road. So when they did a bit of an understanding, look, this is looking back the other way, so that one was looking this way, but they noticed, okay, well here, every car coming around here, not the intersection with the community concern, not the part of community concern, a bit far after, that every car was going into the bike lane, which is a concern, yes, but that was not the real issue. So what was the thinking? Okay, well, if we need that, what we need to do is we need to get rid of the car parking and the signage to improve the car sight lines. What's that going to do? Speed them up. So rather than looking at these sort of things, we're looking at totally from the vehicle occupants, not the vulnerable road user. So then the question is, and this has come out of, when they went to a community meeting with Council and Vic Roads, and I went in there to kind of observe and asked to come along and said my 2 bobs worth. Well, we can't install infrastructure because the speed's too high. Oh dear. Can we lower the speed? Oh no, we can't lower the speed because it's an arterial. So here's the parrot, completely stuck. Okay, community question. Can we stick in a protective barrier so when that cars are coming in there to protect, everyone getting across at that, which is predominantly a cycling refuge, but it's onto the shared path? Oh no, we can't do that because of vehicle occupants. We can't, that would do it. An unacceptable risk to occupants, particularly those, from my point of view, going too fast, driving recklessly or distracted. So no wonder we've had a drop in the number of people walking to transport. walking for transport or walking around that community. So what they're going to look at now is high friction surface treatment. Many of you know what that is. I didn't until last week, but skid proof. So the question now is, okay, so we're going to make that less skid proof going round that bend. So the question is, will the faster drivers, the drivers who usually go fast because they know they're regularly, oh, this is a bit easier, what are they going to do? They're going to go faster. There might be studies that say that doesn't happen, but that's our assumption, and that's what I'm thinking. So from a walking point, when we're thinking about walkability, we have to think about infrastructure as both how important it is, and things like the pedestrian network, providing the infrastructure that makes safe, comfortable, convenient walking, but also the perceived and the actual risks that impact behaviour. So we're not getting to the point where that, we know that, going to marry, we'll get the change when someone's dead, we know that. But that's an unacceptable thing to wait for. Problem is we're over-designing our roads. And I think it's a key thing we've got to remember, the roads are designed to accommodate people driving above the speed, is intended for the roads. So we design them, oh, there's a 60k road, well, we'll make it a bit more for, to make sure we cover everything in. And because we've gone from 60 to 50, our 60 roads were probably 70, some of them to start with, and I'm going out to 50. So we've got a massive problem in our whole road network is designed for cars to go faster than they actually should be. So we need to get to the point of looking at design speed, the European model of designing our streets and our neighbourhoods. I don't care how big a road it is, designing it the slowest speed. It's not just a matter of posting the speed on the road, but designing the road. And doing things like, this is just one of the ways that streets are looked at, but looking at something that requires connected, comfortable, conspicuous, and convenience, everyday travel. Having shop services, things relevant to everyday life within walking distance, and good routes and safe routes to get there that are populated, because populated streets are safer streets. We need to do the things which, Kyle was talking about, like road narrowing, like the curb extensions, looking at the treatments in the raised platforms and the raised crossings, send those visual cues to drivers, and the raised thresholds. And it was really good that the analysis Thorndale has done, looking at the impact, because a lot of people say we shouldn't be doing those because it makes it a bit ambiguous, no one knows what's going on. When you look at the stats that they've looked at, it's showing that the crashes have dropped by doing it. So the concluding comment for me is, I guess, when we're designing the road, we're not just designing for cars, we're designing the whole world we're living in, and what we can and can't do in that world. So we've got to get past saying we need to design this road network for vehicles because it impacts everything we do in our lives, in our community. And what we want, I guess, from governments, engineers who recognise as problem solvers, we just need them to be given the right problem to solve. And so that's the change that we want to work for, is to start designing communities that are designed for people, not tin cans. I think that's it.